Hi, welcome to the Coffee with Lisa podcast. I believe that everyone in business has missing structures and endless possibilities to create new opportunities. The challenge is most don't know how to leverage the relationships for a win-win. I believe that your relationships will make the difference in the results you'll achieve, the impact you will have, and the speed in which you will make opportunities happen. I believe that you can see things through, but you often struggle to see through things. I'll make the invisible visible, the complex simple. Because of these beliefs, I created the Coffee with Lisa podcast and have invited the best experts to join me and share their experiences and knowledge with you so you can move faster and gain a competitive advantage in life and in business.
Hi, my name is Dan Lier. I have a core belief that every human wants to be the best they can be. I really do. My keynote talks are focused on sales, leadership, and productivity. Yet, I'm not a speaker. I'm an inspirational teacher, teaching success principles from what I've accomplished, not from what I've read. I teach people how to win.
I've been very blessed in my career, worked with some of the best Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Og Mandino, Tony Robbins. Over the past 20 years, studied some of the top psychologists in the history of our time, people like Freud, Skinner, Erickson, Jung. And so today is all about how do we get to the next level? How do we change the way we think a little bit?
Lisa, thank you very much for that nice intro. Glad to be here.
Yes, we were just offline talking about today's economy and what's happening in the world with coronavirus. And, it's one of the most talked about topics. So I'd rather talk about, how do you motivate your team? How do you motivate your business? How do you move it from a internal world to a work from anywhere world? And so what's your biggest piece of advice, Dan? Because you've worked with a lot of businesses of all different sizes.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so right now, it's a very strange time, especially in my business. So most of my, I'd say probably 70% of my revenue comes from keynote talks. And we had one cancel this morning, not cancel, but postpone. Yeah. And then the other one I'm probably will postpone. And so it's just a weird time for people in my industry. And then of course, you've got the small business owners, well, any business owner for that matter, but how to drive revenue during these weird times. So I feel like it's been a very, I feel like I'm positioned really well for it. I don't know if you know this or not. Back in 2017, I was diagnosed with a cardiac amyloidosis, an incurable blood disease. And I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. So we started investing in a virtual platform because I didn't know if I was going to be able to walk on stage.
How we met.
What's that?
Is how we met.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So over the last 3 years, we've assembled this incredible platform. And so now, we're offering some, I don't know what you want to call them. We've called them sales accelerators. I don't know. We're moving towards a rescue package, but, we can take a company. And the way I see it is, look, the economy is going to turn around in whatever it's going to be, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it's going to be. And so the question is, how do you manage and motivate and keep the vision with your salespeople and maybe even your other people as well? So, it's weird here in the States. I don't know how it is in Canada, but people are getting laid off. So they're going to file for unemployment, but they're probably going to get hired back within about 60 days. And so what a friggin' great time to do some sales training is what I say. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, how are, and you're stuck at home and you got internet. What more do you need?
That's what you need right there. So we have a package where companies can basically hire me as a virtual sales manager. So we have a full-scale curriculum in the sales mastery course. We just put up a course on how to destroy your fear of prospecting, and what a great time for that. And so we actually have a situation in our company where we can assign training throughout the year. So some companies, they just like the platform and they go, oh, this is great. Other companies, they're not very good at managing their people inside of it. Yeah. So we do that as well. So I feel like that's an opportunity for some people in this weird time that we're in.
Absolutely. Well, and really, and I've always said this because I, have lived and breathed the online training world for a number of years, working with experts like yourself and Dr. Tony Alessandro and Patricia Fripp. And one of the biggest advantages, I think, to online training, especially with you, Dan, is that you actually walk the talk. You've had the history, you've had the experiences that people can learn from. And I think that's really important because, that's what differentiates you between all the other sales experts out there and those who really are an expert. And I think in today's time, it's difficult to decipher who really are the experts, who are the ones that walk the talk and have the experience, that have actually been in that salesperson's role, number of years ago now for you, right?
Yeah.
But you actually had the proof in the pudding, if you will. And let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really important, because there is a lot of options out there now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just talking about going through tough times, I mean, it's, this is a weird time for sure. This is a really weird time, but, it reminds me of, I'm in Vegas, right? So it's got a little 9/11 vibe out here. It's really weird.
I would imagine.
Because, I went to the Pac-12 basketball game here last week, and it was just a weird vibe. And then the next day they shut everything down. So it's like, again, how do you, I lived through those times when 9/11, where people were, they were paralyzed, as if you remember correctly.
Yep.
And so, I just think, having experience in the sales field and motivating and managing and giving sales teams visions when you've been through those times personally is, as a sales professional, is tremendous. And then of course, as maybe a sales leader is tremendous as well. But these are times when leadership really shows up, and this is a great opportunity for leaders to really separate themselves. So, it's a tough time for a lot of people. And of course we're going to get through it. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's a time to show trust with your people, because they're not in the office anymore. So let's talk a little bit about trust, because trust is really important, especially in the sales cycle, but even more so in a leadership role. What do people do when trust is broken? What's your suggestion, Dan?
On which side of the fence, the management side or the employee side?
I think let's talk about both sides. Because this is an important issue, because currently right now we can't be hugging and talking, and we're not in the same room together. And so how we develop trust, number one, is going to look different, but how we actually fix it when trust is broken is going to look different as well.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a real strange, like I said, it's a strange time. And if you're referring to the fact that, people really aren't working in the same office place.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's, if you're talking about prospecting, or if you're talking about somebody within your own company, it really gets down to the communication process, right? I mean, so if you just remove what's happening, and it's just the whatever it's called, the coronavirus. I don't drink that beer. I'm not good at that. So it's just the fact that we've got this strange thing. So the question you have to ask yourself is, everything is driven by the questions you ask yourself. So the quality of your questions drive the quality of your activity. So if you're in this strange situation, so asking yourself, if I was a great communicator today in this world, what would I do differently? And I think you can find the answers for that, because every situation is different. For me to say, hey, here's the 4 steps, I think that's irresponsible, because every situation is different with different marketplaces and different situations. So I think as a leader, you need to go into your resourceful mode and ask yourself, if I were a great communicator right now, what would I do with my sales team or with my team? And then you're going to come up with some answers. Maybe it's some emails, maybe it's you're shooting them over a video, maybe it's you're doing some kind of a Zoom meeting for your people. I don't know, but those are some questions that you need to ask.
Well, and attitude. I mean, you talk a lot about attitudes, right? So let's talk a little bit more about what does the attitude of the person help or hurt in the situation of the communications? From
the management side?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just think that, leadership that's what it is. It's leadership. So in these times, for reference point, it's hard to talk about attitude without a reference. So I measure the attitude on a scale of 0 to 10, right? 10's unstoppable, 0's being a sleeper. And so where are you on that scale of 0 to 10, right? So, you've got to manage your mindset always. It doesn't matter if it's the virus or it's the, 9/11 situation. As a leader, you still have to manage your attitude and your mindset. So again, questions, you're picking up the phone to talk to your employee. You're walking into a room, asking yourself, on a 0 to 10 scale right now, where am I on that 0 to 10 scale? That's a question, I don't ask myself that question anymore because it's so unconsciously competent for me. But it's a good question to ask yourself if you're that person that goes if you're a Dow Joneser as a leader, you're up and down and up and down. I just think attitude is so important, and attitude is everything in these little times.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, and there's a famous quote, attitude is altitude, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So what do you, so if attitude is a key important, what is the process to maintain a winning attitude?
Well, attitude is derived from a lot of things. Attitude is more of a learned skill. So like, a lot of people feel like, oh, I wasn't born that way. I don't wake up happy. So, but that's a cop out. So attitude is like learning how to brush your teeth or something. It's people are sometimes born with more charisma than others, and sometimes people are born with more energy than others, but having a winning attitude is a learned skill. So, it's understanding about what causes a winning attitude, what a winning attitude is, how do you resurrect a winning attitude, and a leader has to know those things. So, one of the, you asked me, how do you do it? One of them is your belief system. That's a very subjective and opaque question because your beliefs drive your behavior. Yeah. So if you have an underlying belief that, people are good or these situations are going to work out, then you typically have a better attitude. Or if you, expect the best from people, or, but on the other hand, if you're cynical or if you're, expect the worst out of people, or you're always expecting things to crash, then that's the kind of person you are, So I think that people can read that and feel that. And so that's a learned skill. It literally is. So in my trainings, when I'm, coaching leaders or sales professionals, I ask them that question, like, as a sales leader, as a sales leader or as a sales manager, where are you on that 0 to 10 scale? And if they're honest, even if they said, hey, I'm a 5, right?
Yeah.
It's okay, because at least you know where you are.
Yeah.
Because, seriously, because if you're a 5 today, there's a chance that you could be a 7 tomorrow if you ask the right questions from yourself. Because I don't really care if you were Debbie Downer for the last 20 years, you can turn your attitude around tomorrow. And so that's the strength of people's mental toughness, because attitude's a learned skill. So when people are walking around boo-hooing and having a negative, that's a choice. That is a choice. And there's something called secondary gain involved. They're looking for secondary gain from other people. That's a psychological term. So, like someone has alcoholism, oftentimes there's secondary gain involved. Yeah. So when someone's walking around boo-hooing, their head down, poor me, there's secondary gain involved. They're looking for attention.
Yeah. Those attention seekers. Would you say that one small shift in your attitude changes the whole game as far as your sales process and your winning attitude?
Without a question. Without a question. I built my career on an attitude.
Yeah.
I literally built my sales career on an attitude. The first job I ever had out of college before I went to work with Tony Robbins was so I got my master's degree because I was going to be a college basketball coach.
Yep.
Then I decided I didn't want to do that. So I got a job selling insurance, and, I got trained. And
that's a big, I'm going to do this versus that's a big pendulum shift down.
Well, anything outside of a basketball court was a huge pendulum shift. So seriously, I had no idea how I was going to put food on the table for myself. That was scary as hell for me.
Yeah.
So, what were we talking about? I just lost my train of thought.
Attitude, like one small shift, how you built your whole career on your attitude.
Yeah. I really feel that way because I talk to people about that all the time. So attitude is your brand. When I'm out there talking right now, I did keynotes for Verizon, JP Morgan, Chase, everybody's talking about how do we decommoditize our business?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so competitive. Everybody's got the same product. How do we decommoditize our business? One of the ways you do that is with a winning attitude, because people, if all pricing is the same, you're going out there and you're selling products. I mean, they're going to buy from somebody, right?
Yeah.
So are they going to buy from somebody who's cynical and negative, or are they going to buy someone who's optimistic or bringing value to the table? So that's your brand. That is your personal brand, and you control the narrative as a sales professional, who you are when you walk in the room. So I teach people this all the time. So I have something that's called a greeting strategy. Would you like to hear about it?
Yes, of course I would.
Yeah. So one of the ways to turn your attitude around is, I talk to these, it's easy to go in and say, hey, you have to have a winning attitude.
Yeah.
But the reason why I get hired again is because I actually teach them how to do it. That's the key in this business, is teaching people how to do things. So one of the ways.
It's in your virtual training platform, right?
That's right. That's right. You know that. You know that. Yeah. So, one of the ways is just, being cognizant of that number, but also coming out with a brand. Like, so for instance, when people say, hey, Lisa, how are you? Mm-hmm. You know intellectually that they're really not asking you how you are. It's just a greeting, right? Hey, Lisa, what's up? Hey, Lisa, what's going on? Right? Because if you start telling them what's going on, they're going to stop asking you what's going on, right?
Exactly.
They just want to say, hey, what's up, right? So I learned this a long time ago. I said, since people really aren't asking me how I'm doing, now, not because they're bad people, it's just because it's just a greeting. Hey, what's up? Since they're not really asking me, then I'm just going to bring it. I'm going to bring some energy. I'm going to bring some fun. And I've been doing that for, 15 years. And it literally turned my career around. So you can talk to me anytime you want, day, night, on the phone, and say, hey, Dan, what's going on? How you doing? You're going to hear a few things from me. I'm on fire. I'm unstoppable. I'm unbelievable. And as silly as that sounds, it literally transformed my business. Yeah. Because people like to do business with people that make them feel good.
Absolutely. And you're being authentically genuine. Here's the difference. There's one thing of telling somebody everything is great. I got the white picket fence. Look at my family. Look at my life. I'm fantastic. I mean, people do it on social media all the time. There's a difference when you tell it with authenticity and genuine passion behind what you're saying. And that is why, truly, Dan, why you've done so well. Because you're not just feeding the Kool-Aid, you are actually living it.
Yeah. Well, the attitude thing has always been, it's kind of like, it's the intangible. It's the little thing that makes the big difference. It's one of the things that can make up for a lot of deficiencies. So, I really believe that. Two things can make up for a lot of deficiencies: attitude and hustle. So you can have limited sales skills. You can have a limited vocabulary, not very friggin' smart, but if you hustle, you have a winning attitude, you can make money in sales. So, where I am now, Lisa, when I got diagnosed, before I got diagnosed, I thought I was going to die. And so you have a change of perspective when that happens. So, I talk a lot about perspective now in regards to attitude, because, before I got diagnosed, I was just like a normal person, I assume. I was a nice guy, but had little idiosyncrasies that people didn't know about, like getting pissed off about traffic, or getting pissed off about slow walking people in the airports, things like that, little stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And those little things used to get me upset and literally turn my attitude just a little bit from hypothetically a 9 to a 6.
Yep.
And a little thing like that. But then, when I found myself laying in bed and I literally thought I was going to die, you start praying for times, and you pray that, you have another chance to be stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
And so the perspective that I have is so different now, because I used to, like any normal person, you get frustrated or upset. I can literally tell you that I don't get frustrated or upset anymore, because it just doesn't matter. Yeah. So like I reframed all those things, because, I remember laying in bed and said, damn, if I ever get a chance to go get stuck in that traffic again, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to, connect with somebody I love and care about, or I'm going to call a client, or I'm going to listen to a podcast, or, I might even just listen to a song, Yeah. So I've got options to do that. I could look around and see the people in the cars and realize that I'm alive. You know, I used to be pissed off about people who walked slow in the airports until I was the slow walking guy. Until they were pissed.
In all fairness to if you are watching this right now, you have to understand Dan is like this far above me.
yeah. I'm 6'8", so I have very
tall.
long legs.
So just if you're watching this, Dan's a tall guy. Just
tall guy.
Give perspective.
So I think perspective is a lot of it. You know, attitude's a skill, and having perspective is a gift that I have now that I didn't have before. And so.
Well, and I hope that that's the gift that is the gift that keeps on giving through the coronavirus, is that it gives people some perspective, some human kindness. First of all, you know, I was reading a friend of mine had a post on Facebook, and she was talking about how she saw this lady in the grocery store who was crying in the aisle. And so she went over and said, like, what is wrong? And she hadn't realized that there was a baby behind her. And this woman was literally beside herself because she could not find baby formula for her child. You know, and so that just makes you just like, oh God. And then I think about, you know, I had twin daughters, and what I would feel like in the moment like this, where I need a baby formula for my babies and I couldn't find it. You know, that gives you massive perspective very quickly.
Yeah,
and so I can appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it is, you know, you don't really feel those things until you live through them. So I really work hard at attempting to give people that perspective, you know, about what would that be like? If that did happen to you, what would that be like? And if you did almost pass away and you had your second chance, what kind of an attitude would you have today?
Yeah.
Because it would change people. It really would change people.
Yeah.
And
so
I think
I can't, because I mean, I'm not dying, but I can only imagine how much that would change for me, never mind whoever's watching this right now.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that's been something that's benefited me in the later part of my career, because that's only been the last couple years. But for me, attitude's it's just been a part of the winning success. I mean, to me, it's just part of your success formula. You know, to me, it's what I built my career on. So I feel like if you have nothing else but a winning attitude and some hustle, you can be successful. And if you want to actually learn sales skills, and you want to learn how to build rapport, and you have to learn how to ask questions, and you can be pretty good. Yeah.
Well, and you know that I have a very strong relationship and now a partnership with Dr. Tony Alessandra, and I know you know Tony very well. So Tony and I have been really working on, you know, some assessments and some strategies around relationships and what does that look like, and some new tools. And we've come up with a new tool, so we're really excited about that.
Excellent.
To really help people navigate through those cold conversations and those initial you know, when you first meet somebody, what are the questions that you ask? How do you better understand who they are and position, not change who you are, but, you know, practice Tony's platinum rule, treat others how they'd rather be treated than how you'd want to be treated. So, you know, but attitude plays a key component even in that part. But let's talk a little bit more about your personal life, because attitude, I mean, first of all, is why you and I are here right now having this conversation. But second of all, I mean, you and Jennifer have an amazing relationship. I'm sure that your attitude for living has, you know, fostered that relationship. I mean, you've got the Business with Love podcast. So if anybody's out there, I mean, Jennifer is drop dead gorgeous, first of all, an amazing human being. I've watched a number of your guys' podcasts. I want to talk a little bit about the last one that you had, which was Married and Lonely.
Yes.
You know, and I think in today's time when people are secluded in their homes with their significant other, and it could be for a number of weeks in their family, you can be married and you can be lonely. And how do you change that? Here's, you know, this is a great opportunity for people to do that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's a deep one. You know, that is a real deep one. That's what
this is all about, right? So let's get into it. So how, you know, you and Jennifer talked about it. Let's, you know, for those of you who have not watched Married, The Business of Love, Married and Lonely, episode 42, let's just, you know, give us a quick recap.
Well, I don't have my notes out. I'm going to see if I can find them on the podcast here. What I will tell you that, let me see here. Well, the episode was about people who are alone, people who are married, but you know the feeling, like, or the saying is that they're seen but they're not heard, right? You're in this relationship, but no one can hear you speak, and that's lonely. And it doesn't just happen to females; it happens to both genders. And so, you know, that happens over time when there's a disconnect for, you know, whether it's weeks or months or years, where it's just that, you know, that passe kind of connection where it's just like a friendship, like not even a friendship. It's just like your roommates, right? You're just kind of like,
I was going to say more like a roommate, right?
more like a roommate. And so, I mean, like married and alone, to me, you've been in a place for a long time to where you haven't addressed the issues of you being alone and there being a lack of connection. So, I mean, that takes some real work. And I think, you know, the first thing to do, you know, it's about being able to communicate. And that's one of the issues with that situation, is oftentimes the person that's not being heard doesn't have the platform or the ability to communicate to the other person, or the other person is just not open. And so that's a challenge. And so then it gets down to, I mean, I'm talking very big here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because every situation is so different. You know, you can have people in relationships that are married and lonely, but they're still in love, but they just lost track of it. Other people are married and lonely and they are not in love anymore, right? And so there's a scale there, and you know, where are you in that scale? And I don't know where that person could be, but those situations just don't happen overnight. You know, they build.
And they don't get fixed overnight either.
They don't get fixed overnight. So, but scaling back, Lisa. So if you're listening to this right now, when you're one of Lisa's listeners or followers, the podcast is called The Business of Love. The Business of Love, and it's available on iTunes and Stitcher. And what we do is that, so, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, been an entrepreneur my entire life, worked with some amazing people. And as an entrepreneur, and my wife is she was an entertainer for 25 years. Now she books speakers for a bureau. And so we're both entrepreneurial, if you will. And so, you know, just understanding that the entrepreneurial process is one of those things. And Lisa, I got to tell you, I just forgot what I was talking about. What were we talking about?
So we were talking about like the familiarity of the process of, you know, you're out of love or you're in love.
Yeah. So sorry. So we were just talking about there's different grades there. So you've got to be able to have, like I said, some people are in love and they're disconnected, and some people are not in love at all. So how do you've got to be able to ask questions, and that's the hardest part for people, because if there's no connection, how do you even get there? And that's the hardest part for people. So, you know, in our podcast, what I was talking about is, in business, we are so focused on, if you're an entrepreneur, you're HR, VP of sales, Lisa, as you know, you'll do anything to learn and grow. You'll take a class to be more patient. You'll learn skills. So like your Tony Alessandro skills.
Bring people on so that I can learn from them.
Yeah. And if we did the same thing in our relationships, intimate or otherwise, we would have better relationships. So that's what Jennifer and I talk about, is putting your business hat on and saying, hey, if this relationship is not working with your VP of sales, what would you do? Yeah. You know, if you're not connected with your VP of sales and you are the CEO, that's a problem. And so you wouldn't let that just sit there. You would fix it because you have to. And so why do we want to leave that sitting over on the other side? We just let it go for years. And then we wake up one day and say, oh man, I'm unhappy. So, you know, what we attempt to do is talk to people about, you know, simple business practices and what we do every single day. And if we just followed that same course, and we could resurrect our relationships, and that's why it's called The Business of Love. So to answer your question, I don't think it's a quick fix on that question. I mean, I mean, if somebody is in that, you know, married and lonely phase, the first thing they should do is go listen to that podcast.
Exactly.
Because, because Jennifer led that podcast, and she interviewed a woman named Shasta Nelson, who talks about loneliness and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so I'm not able to articulate those points as well as she could.
Yep.
So that's why I'm saying that, is because there's certain structures and things that you can do that are in that podcast.
Well, and what a woman's perspective of it is, and this is really why I brought it up, Dan, because a woman's perspective of what lonely is in a marriage and a man's perspective of what lonely is can be very different. And of course it can be, different ends of the spectrum like we talked about.
Right.
But I know your background. I know, your ability to understand the other person across the table and the type of personality they are. And that's really important as well, because, one of the things that I learned recently about my husband, and we've been together, we were 24 when we first met. So we've been together a number of years, let's put it that way. Yeah, thank you. And not everything is easy. Marriage is not easy, and you grow and you change and you adapt, and you hope that you adapt together, or you move apart. But I think one of the most successful things that you can figure out is who is your spouse. In other words, what type of personality are they? And are they different from you? And if they're different from you, what does that look like? And how do you adapt to make sure that your communication is heard? And that's really what you're talking about. Men speak and talk differently than women. Yeah. It just is.
Well, that's definitely one of the things I'm talking about. Definitely one of the things. There's definitely communication styles. If you just take, what what you're talking about from Tony's program, if people just utilize that program, they would be much more successful in their business.
Yeah. And in their life.
Relationships.
And with their kids. I mean, it was, we created this product. I'm just going to show it very quickly to you. And they're cards about the different personality styles. Nice. And you rank them based on, your beliefs and your values. And are you open or closed or guarded or not? And I know all these things, right? Yeah. But you can do that with your kids too. And I know, you've got kids in college right now who, unfortunately, you were just telling me one of them's, grad is probably going to be canceled. But having said that, it's important to understand who your personalities of your kids. And when you understand them, you have better relationships.
Definitely. I mean, I think those tools are so important, just to have a baseline of how to communicate with people. So obviously your audience, I'm sure, knows what you're talking about, right? The disc model, right? So yeah, just having that basic knowledge. So like, I am so when I teach the disc model, Lisa, I do it different. So like, I call the dominant, the race car driver. Yeah. So I'm a race car driver, and my wife is a school teacher. And so we have a totally different type of paces and different priorities. And so, knowing that is a big thing for both of us. So those are good keys. So I have to slow down, obviously, when I speak with her, and she's got to speed it up with speaks with me. Yeah.
Well, and it's not fundamentally, it's not changing who you are. You're still the race car driver, and she's still the teacher. It's just adapting how you're communicating with each other. I think people need to understand that, because there's an understanding that you think that you have to change who you are fundamentally, and that's just not true.
Definitely not true.
It's just not true.
No.
So I have a question for you, and Don Hudson asks this question all the time. So I know that you know Jim Cathcart really well, and Jim Cathcart and I are writing a book together. He said, Don Hudson asks this question all the time. I'm like, I'm going to use that when I speak to Dan Lier. So the question is, what is more clear today with your business than wasn't last week?
Oh boy, that's interesting.
Isn't that a good question? I thought that's a good question, Don.
What's more clear about my business right now that wasn't last week?
Yeah.
I feel like we're positioned really well to help companies through this weird time. So I didn't plan for the coronavirus. I didn't know that was coming, obviously. But the work that we've done in our online training and our university has positioned us that we can really help people. And so I really want to help people. So I want to utilize it as almost like a rescue, rather than trying to go sell it to them, meaning for a big price. I want to help them, because if I can, the deal, because once they get on it, they want to stay on it anyway. So Giving people an opportunity to help guide their people during these tough times, I think is really, really valuable. And we have that tool, and I'm excited about it, because I literally can call people and say, look, this is a weird time. I know you don't know exactly what to do. Nobody does, but I have a tool for you to help you maintain your organization for the next 30 to 60 days in regard to keeping their head in the game and keeping them on track. And that's valuable.
Well, I think, you know what, and I think the key point there is keeping their head in the game. How are you going to keep people motivated moving forward about the business when they're not in the business right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I have a strong continuing education background. So I think the other thing too that's been very interesting is now all these conferences, events. I mean, we're both speakers. We understand, things are moving to online summits and so forth. And what does that mean? Are people literally going to sit for hours at a time in these online summits? I just don't know that that's going to be the reality of it, right? So, but again, a lot of people are dependent on these live events to get their continuing education credits, and they're not going to get them. And their livelihoods depend on this. And so what does that look like when it comes to online training, and how do you move forward quickly in those spaces as well? So it's important.
That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. So somebody who might be positioned for that is like, wow, that's a great thing.
Exactly. So Dan, we're going to have to get you positioned for that. But just, it is a real problem, because, if you're a CPA or, even a sales professional who's got a certification or a license that requires recertification, how are you going to get those credits? Because you're not attending those events,
So they don't have those, Lisa, online events, those like accredited events online?
Well, they do to a certain degree, like you have webinars or so forth, but not online training, not like we're talking about. Yeah. So it's important to, think about those things as well. But anyways, we're at the top of the hour, and I really appreciate you coming on to the Coffee with Lisa show. For those of you who are tuning in, you can find Dan Lier at danlier, Lier.com. And on Facebook, what's your Facebook handle, Dan?
Yeah, everything is just Dan Lier, DANLIER. Facebook, Instagram. And so also on my Instagram bio is you can see all kind of a menu for different sales tools that I have. So you can find me there. And LinkedIn, obviously.
Yeah. And so if you're, you're watching this and you're really looking for some way to keep your sales team motivated, Dan's got some options for you.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been a pleasure, and you are so awesome, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, and likewise.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now. Have a great cup of coffee, folks.
See ya.